Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
And welcome once again to the Stoogecast. My name is Corey Utler, and I am your host here on the ASTRO RADIO Z network. And our guest this time, once again, is author Steve Cox, the author of One Fine Stooge, which is arguably one of, if not the greatest book ever written in conjunction with anything to do with the Three Stooges. And if you haven't had a chance to read Steve's book yet, pause this episode, go on Amazon, find a copy, One Fine Stooge, read it, come on back, and enjoy part 2 of our conversation with author Steve Cox. And here in part 2, this episode's actually going to be a little bit longer than the last one, but in this one he goes into his relationships with Joe DeRita and Joe Besser, Emil Sitka, and he also takes us inside, behind the scenes of the Stooges Hollywood Walk of Fame ceremony. He was there. He had a prominent role, and he's going to go into all of that on this episode of the Stoogecast. Steve Cox, author of One Fine Stooge, and also he's working on a book on Curly, and we go deep into that also on the program. So, coming up in just a second, part 2 of the Stoogecast with Steve Cox. Stick around.
Mo, we got it.
You got what?
We found a way to put Simonized car wax and Simonized car cleaner all in one push-button can.
And just how does it work, Professor Nitwit?
Come on, we'll show you.
Come on, we'll show you.
Come on,
Now look, it squirts on. You push the button. See?
And then what?
You spread it around and let it dry.
And it's really Simonized, is it?
Watch this.
Sure, it's Simonized. Look at that shine.
We'll be famous. We'll make a fortune. We'll call it Instant Simonized.
Instant Simonized, you lame brains. You can already buy Instant Simonized everywhere.
Instant Simonized? They thought of it too?
Simonized thinks of everything. Try Instant Simonized, another easy new way to brighten your day. From Simonized Company.
And author Steve Cox joins us for part 2 of our conversation here on the Stoogecast. And Steve, we might as well, I put it on our Facebook page before we had the interviews, but it was a picture of you with Sean and Chris and Will, Larry, Moe, and Curly from the Farrelly Brothers Three Stooges movie, and looked like all smiles, looked like a good time. And I'm not afraid to say that I was a fan of the movie. What did you think about the Three Stooges movie?
That Stooges movie didn't bother me. Some people say, why redo it? Well, it has its place, and I didn't think that the script was so great, but the storyline, but the recreation of the comedy act itself was really pretty good.
The guy who played Moe with his, because, Moe would always have, hey, spinach and porcupine, hey, grape head, something like that. And in this one, it was things like, he called the British butler 3PO, and just these updated insults and little pet names he had for people were just brilliant. I thought that stuff was really well done, and they did the actors really captured the essence of the Stooges, and it didn't seem to me like they were they didn't do their own take on it, which would have been the kiss of death. They were those guys.
Yes, trying desperately and successfully to really recreate and then build on some of the routines. There's even a little bit some fresher things that the Stooges didn't necessarily do, but maybe even with a little more rapid fire motion this time. They tried to really get it down. And so I was impressed by a large aspect of it.
Don't you watch where you're going, bud? Mo? Larry? Curly? Is that you?
Depends who's asking.
It's me, Ted O.J. Harder.
Who?
Here, look. I got a snapshot of me and the Rents leaving the orphanage.
Hey, it is you.
Wait, let's get a quick pic first.
What is that gadget?
This is an iPhone.
iPhone?
Hello? Hello? nobody there. Works better on your ear.
I remember when I met those guys, a friend of mine invited me to a press junket where the three guys were in makeup and character, and they were filming these wraparounds, and there were a whole day of interviews and kind of well-prepared and sometimes scripted little bits that they would do with reporters. It was sort of like a swinging door type of thing. They'd just come in and next, and then that reporter would take that back to their hometown and play it in the news and stuff like that. So it was very similar, but the best thing is that they had the three guys in full makeup and character. So I went in on a break real quick, and I gave them a book, and they said, "Oh, my God, we already have your book. We looked at this book when we were doing research, and they were praising the book, which just floored me. But Mo, this guy, let's see, what's his name? Diamantopoulos?
Yeah, Chris. Yeah.
Yes. He said, "Steve, do you know the apartment where Larry lived at the Knickerbocker? Do you know which one?" And I didn't. I've never run across. It's probably somewhere on an envelope, on a document, something, somewhere, not of my access, but he and his wife lived at the Knickerbocker Hotel with full services and that for many years here in Hollywood, and it still exists, and with apartments and that type of thing. And he and his wife either still do or did for a while live there at the Knickerbocker. And he was just wondering what number it was or what floor it was, I said, "Oh, man," I said, "I don't know which one it was." And we're kind of laughing about that here he's playing Mo and he's living in the same building where Larry lives.
Might be living in Larry's apartment.
You never know. That would be the strangest thing of all. It will be found. Somebody's got that somewhere, what apartment it was, written down or by memory. But, but those guys were really, those three guys, Will Sasso and Sean Hayes, did a really great job. And I hope that they can do an even better movie this next round. It all depends on the director and the script and all that.
Right.
It could be good. Could be good. And all it will do is make people long for the original team anyway, so that's fine. Send people back with fiery torches, back to the original. Back to the original. And I love the fact that Sony, took all the shorts, finally, remastered them off of the original negatives, and put them out as a box set. I've waited all my life for that. If you go by that, those things are so clean and so beautiful. The only thing that could be better is if they were on Blu-ray, and maybe they'll do that one day. It'll be expensive, but it would be worth it. But I can't imagine they'll be too much higher grade because these things are so clean. And you have to remember that it's amazing that Columbia, now Sony, saved all these old negatives, not the films, but the negatives. They have these things stored in great condition. You go back to like Laurel and Hardy and all that. Let me tell you, people have gone and looked for the original elements on a lot of their shorts and movies, and they just don't exist. And so the box sets that are the primo of what Laurel and Hardy fans, have today, some of those prints are just really lacking, and they just, they're soft and not focused and not that great. The Stooges, we have it great here. We've got these original negatives on all the shorts, all 190 shorts, and they look spectacular.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I'm from a time where, everything was on VHS, and if you were lucky, and I even remember when Columbia, it must have been the mid-'80s, 86, 85, had started putting out the VHS where it was 3 shorts. So it was 60 minutes worth of the Stooges. Some of those prints that they had on those, the transfers, miserable. Absolutely miserable. And then you go back and you see what they've done now with them, and you say, my God, it's pristine.
Pristine, absolutely. Right to the first short, Woman Haters, 1934. It's beautiful and glorious, and the sound is perfect and everything. Oh, man, sometimes I'll just put these things in and just marvel at how beautiful they are and so sharp. We're lucky that those original elements survive and that Columbia knew to take care of those materials over the decades, you know.
Mo, come here. Wait a minute. I'm sorry. I thought you was the goon. Say something. Say something. Numbskull.
Going back a little bit in conversation, now you had a relationship with some of the Stooges, with actual Stooges and some of the Stooge players. Can you go back and just kind of tell us your relationship and how you got to know these guys and how did that come about and what was the relationship like as you went along?
I have to say, it was at a gentler time, and it was all before the internet and all of that. It was at a time when people used to write letters, you know.
Imagine that.
Yeah, amazing. And for that reason, I have, you know, a trunk full of letters and things like that I treasure. When I was in 7th, 8th grade, so that's like 78, 79, right in there. I started this kick where I started writing to some actors and things like that. I would get hold of some addresses and that, but I was also on a Stooges kick. So I started writing people that I don't even know why. For instance, I got hold of the address of Hanna-Barbera Studios, and I thought, I'm going to write a letter to Mel Blanc. Well, it got to him, and we struck up a friendship and a correspondence, which lasted until he died. And you know, Mel was he was a good friend, and of course we're talking about the voice of Bugs Bunny and every classic cartoon character out there. And that was an awful lot of fun. And it was around that time that I discovered, you know, Long Distance Directory. And you'd be surprised who was listed in the phone book back then. Joe Besser was listed in the phone book, you know, which was a bizarre thing. And I got hold of, through a fan in St. Louis, he gave me Emil Sitka's address. And Emil Sitka, of course, is one of the great, you know, foils, co-stars of the Stooges, one of only 2 people that worked with all 4 sets of Stooges.
Right.
He didn't work so much with Curly, only in Curly's last short, but then lots with Shemp, with Besser, in most of the Stooges films with Curly Joe, in the cartoon series, and then at the very, very tail end of their career, Mo invited him to take over for Larry, which was a project that never happened. It was only they got together for some photographs, and that was it. But he was friends with the Stooges and observed the best of them, you know, and was friends with them, and I got to write Emil, and thankfully he was so open and generous with his time, and accommodating to fans, and he would encourage it. His letters would say, now you write me back. He would do this. He would say, now you write me back and you tell me which is your favorite Stooge short. And if you have any questions about that, you tell me, and this and that. He was great about that. So, of course, he encouraged you to write him back. He wrote handwritten letters and postcards and that, too, and would reply to every one of your letters. And I'm not the only fan that used to correspond with Emil. He had a great correspondence with tons and tons of fans. He spent an awful lot of his later years doing that, even after he had suffered a stroke and that. I mean, he tried to write again, and he would take your phone calls. He would visit with you. I went out and stayed with him in Camarillo where he lived, and kind of tooled around town with him a little bit, and he would show me things. We went and visited Curly Joe together, and things like that. And so Emil was great. He put me in touch with Curly Joe and with Joe Besser. I was a little too young, too late to get to know Mo and Larry, unfortunately. There's a lot of Stooge fans that did correspond with Mo and Larry, and those guys were extremely open to doing the same thing. I mean, long handwritten letters with personal remembrances and things like that. And so that's one of the things I featured in the One Fine Stooge book at the tail end of it. I opened it up to some contributions from some other fans that knew Mo and Larry, and let them speak about their relationship with Larry in particular, but a little bit about Mo as well, and how those guys, you know, the good thing about Larry, he had a stroke, but it didn't affect his handwriting. He wrote beautiful handwriting, and would respond to fans, take their phone calls. Both of those guys, Mo and Larry, would do radio interviews. So a lot of that survives over the years, which is really nice. Mo at that time was still doing college appearances and things like that. I don't know that any video of that stuff exists, but there are some videotape things. People would go with their home movies, sound and otherwise, to visit Larry, and he'd sit there in his wheelchair and answer questions and talk and reminisce, So those guys were open to it, but I was fortunate to get to know Joe Besser and Joe DeRita, and they were very kind to have me visit and things like that. And I think Joe Besser enjoyed it because I was from St. Louis, so we had something to talk about. His sister still lived in St. Louis, and I got to know her a little bit. She was elderly, and so I would bring snapshots out to Joe and show him here's pictures of your sister and that type of thing. These guys were old and cranky and fun and it was just really amazing. I wish I was so young at the time also. I mean, I wish I had done more with them and interviewed them more, asked them more, things, many things. Where were each of the Stooges when Kennedy was shot?
Right.
Things like that. I did find out though where Larry was when another one of those memorable moments where people who were old enough remember where they were when the moon landing occurred. And where were you and what TV were you watching? And Larry was over at his girlfriend's house with a friend of his, and I ended up interviewing this friend, so he knew where Larry was that night, because he said we all watched it together, and I thought that was kind of an interesting moment. At least I could pinpoint that one, But, yeah, I enjoyed my friendship with Besser and DeRita, and it was strange. Besser, he wasn't great about writing so much. He didn't really want to correspond much, although he did every once in a while. But he was okay about taking phone calls, and I wrote him a letter. I got his phone and his address, but I remember thinking I better write him a letter first. So I did, and he wrote me back this really nice letter. He would type it and sign it, and he thanked me and all this and that and for writing and sent a couple of signed pictures, and then I thought, well, I've got his phone number. Boy, I'd really like to call him. And I was thinking about doing it, and then all of a sudden one night, it was a Friday night, I was watching TV with my parents, and the phone rang. It was around 8 o'clock, I think, St. Louis time. And I answered the phone, and this old guy says, "Steve, do you know who this is?" And I said, "No, this is Joe Besser." And I just flipped. I couldn't believe it. I'm just, I didn't know what to do. And he says, I said, well, I said, "Can I ask you a few questions about the Three Stooges?" And which he didn't mind so much. But later, as you got to know him, he got cranky about it because not so much from me, but he would say, "Oh, everybody just wants to ask questions about the Three Stooges. I did so much more than the Three Stooges." Because if you think about it, that was just 2 years of his career.
Yeah.
So justifiably so. But that first time I'm asking him questions, and how did you like working? Very, very inane questions. How did you like working with Mo and Larry and that type of thing? And then I said, could you do one of your catchphrases? What? I said, would you do one of your lines? What? Would you do one of your catchphrases? Not so loud. Not so loud. He set me up on the phone, which I loved. I thought, my God, that's great. I couldn't believe it. And he did it oh, my God, it was pitch perfect, too. I can't do Besser, but if you can imagine him saying that, not so loud. So I'm dying. I'm laughing on the phone, and I just said, well, could I write you every once in a while? He said, sure, and, so we did. And then we kept up a nice little friendship until he died. I was in college when he died. And Curly Joe, I kept up a nice friendship with. He was nearly blind at the end, so he didn't see very well at all. He could see shapes and things like that, but You'd have to get pretty close to him for him to really look at you. For him to watch TV, he had to be 4 inches away from the screen. It was it's kind of sad. When he would sign autographs, he would sort of clear off a little area on his desk, and he put this light right down on the photo, and he would get out this jeweler's loop, and he put it in his eye and get just 2 inches away from the photo and start signing it, very carefully and everything. That was his routine. He was okay with that, though. He would do it for you. He would autograph things. So, but for that reason, I don't have that many things autographed by DeRita, but some treasured things, Moe's book and some photos and things like that. But he didn't really correspond with anybody. But his wife was pretty good about it, Jean. She was good about answering questions or little notes here and there and that. But I liked phone calls more than anything, and I used to tape them. So I've got a nice little collection of some taped conversations with Besser and DeRita, and Emil Sitka was just the best. There was a period of time where he suggested, here, buy an audio tape, and because I had a little tape recorder. Back then there was no videotape, there was no, none of that stuff. You audio taped, and I eventually ran into a lot of people that used to tape record the audio off of the TV, like of a Stooge short, and kind of re-listen to it. And I did that too,
I did it too. I absolutely did, and I used to put it in my Walkman, and I would ride my bike to school, and that was how I got prepared for my day.
Oh my God! And so you could imagine the video. You could imagine the short by listening to it. And you would listen to it, and this is all before videotape. And no, videotape existed. It's just home use was not around. And
it was just way too expensive and not easily transportable. Now, I mean, can you imagine if you had your iPhone, you could shoot a video interview. You could shoot an entire interview with them.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And but I did what I could, and Emil was very encouraging about that. And he said, get it audio tape, and you record on there questions and comments and whatever you want to do and say to me and whatever. And then when you send it to me, I'll record over it with all the answers and everything, whatever. And he would do that, but only he would put sound effects in.
Oh.
At one time, I remember it started out with the toilet flushing, and as a gag, and he'd say, "Sorry about that. I was a little busy there," funny, stupid stuff like that. It was very funny, but he would go through and answer questions and make comments and stuff like that. Sort of like little mini interviews and we would do sort of an audio taped correspondence too, and that was fun. And I remember one of a great memory for me was when the Three Stooges they received their star on Hollywood Boulevard, and this was in 1983. And Moe's family fought very hard for that. They paid for that star because somebody has to, fork over the money. I think Joan and Norman Maurer, that's Moe's daughter and son-in-law, they wrote the check for that, but they had plenty of money, so it was no worries there.
Right.
But after a lot of campaigning from fans, and that the Stooges finally were going to get this star on Hollywood Boulevard, and I flew out and represented the fan club. Mo Feinberg, he was too ill. He didn't want to make the trip, and I'm not sure he could really have afforded it, but which was too bad. I was kind of really hoping he would go there to represent the Stooges Club, but he had me do it as the vice president, and they had me get up and speak on the dais and everything. I mean, next to Burl and Milton Berle and Joe.
Oh, my gosh.
Joan Maurer and Larry's daughter and that. So I was thrilled and had a ball. And strange thing, the Maurers didn't have such a great relationship with Emil Sitka at that point, and because he objected to a lot of things that were in Moe's book, things that were and weren't in the book, and so they didn't invite him, which was just kind of mean, I think, because he should have been there. So I invited him to be my guest, And Emil went with me as my guest to the and so when Gary Owens, who was the host, saw that Emil was there, he said, "Oh my God, we have to get Emil up on the dais." He's, so he went over and asked Emil, "Would you speak as well?" And specifically made that request of Emil, and he said, "Of course I will." So they invited Emil up there to talk as well, and he got big laughs, and even reminisced about him and Shemp walking down together. They were going somewhere, walking down and looking at the stars on the boulevard, even commenting why the Stooges didn't have one,
Wow.
because those things were implanted in the 1950s, the first big lot of them. And the Stooges, it's amazing that it took campaigning for them to get one, but they finally did. And even then, the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce kind of dissed them in a way, because they didn't even put them on the Hollywood. They're on one of the side streets.
Yeah.
Which is not even Hollywood Boulevard. People of absolute lesser careers have stars on the boulevard, but the Stooges were put on a side street, and I thought that was pretty crappy. But for the most part, people were thankful. And at that time, they got the largest crowd. It was massive. They had to shut down a portion of the street and everything. They had the largest crowd up to that point for a ceremony. And then after that, Michael Jackson's ceremony topped it. But there was like 3,000 people out there.
Wow.
It was a mess.
Like the Beatles were in town.
It was unbelievable. And the press that was out there was stunning. I had never seen just rows and rows and rows up on sort of like a stand area of press there to cover this. And Joe Besser, I remember, went out and signed some autographs. Emil stayed there and went out and signed for anybody that wanted to, and stayed there long after everybody, all the people had left and that. So he was great to the fans and took pictures with people and pleased everybody there. So that was a lot of fun. And to me, that was a great joy to watch Emil enjoy himself there. And he should have been there. He deserved to be there, and congratulate them along with the rest. And Curly Joe was not there. He had a little bit. He had he was quite large. He was quite large, obese. He could walk. He could get around. And I think he probably could have made it, but his wife said he had a bit of a bladder problem, so it was not the easiest thing to do to get him out, and for certain things. So he probably didn't go out for much other than doctor's appointments and things like that. But Joe Besser went, and he was good and represented the Stooges, and it was a beautiful ceremony, and it was nice. Everybody. There was representatives from all Stooges families there. Curly's wife was there, Shemp's grandkids, Shemp's granddaughters, and daughter-in-law. Larry's sister was there. I'm sorry. Wait a minute. No, Larry's daughter was there. And Moe's kids, Paul and Joan, were there. So it was a lot of Stooges family there. A lot of fun. Milton Berle, it was great. Paying tribute to those guys, and he had worked with them in vaudeville and on television and that, and was old friends with them. So it was a neat event, and for me, a big highlight of my experience as a fan of the Stooges. I'm just like anybody else. I am a fan. That first and foremost. I love the Stooges. It's sort of, during periods of my life has kind of had its lulls and its highlights. But I've really enjoyed. I could have gotten into worse things, but I picked a good one, and it was something that just sort of, as a kid, just hit me, and I thought, I want to know more about these guys. I want to know more, and that was what started me out on my whole journey,
Hey, Mo, what's cooking? You're a goose if you don't shut up and do something.
All right, Doc.
Oh, the joint's on fire. Oh, we only had some marshmallows. Go out and get some marshmallows. What's marshmallows? Come on, get this thing out. All right.
It's always one of those where I said throughout my life, and I'm closing in on 40 now, to look back on it and say, of all the ups and all the downs, and all the changes that you go through in your life, the only thing that has never let me down is the Three Stooges. And it doesn't matter what kind of day I've had, if I'm having a great day, a terrible day, if it's raining, if it's snowing, if it's hot, if it's cold. The Stooges are always the one thing that I can default to and know that they're not going to let me down. They never disappoint.
Absolutely, yeah. And there's a lot of it. There's a glut of it out there. I mean, you can follow the Stooges from the first points of their career all the way to the end, and there's an awful lot out there. I mean, granted, much like Laurel and Hardy, a massive amount of film to go through, and their whole career, and much to mine. You know what I mean? To dig and discover, and people are still discovering rarities, with Laurel and Hardy and Abbott and Costello and the Stooges. So, and same with the W.C. Fields and the Marx Brothers. Any of those comedy teams that had some longevity and resurgence over the years, there's plenty to mine. But the Stooges, boy, it has not. It's only gotten bigger and better over the years, and I don't know whether it'll ever really decline much. But boy, with me, I'm having fun working on this Curly book and discovering things here and there, mostly photos, images, rare things, and quotes here and there, but materials that haven't been printed and films that haven't been seen. So as I said, up to last year, seeing Hello Pop and and now they're finally putting all of this stuff on DVD and making it accessible, either that or on YouTube or wherever. And there's a lot of rare stuff on YouTube as well. I can only recommend, by the way, Paul Howard, Moe's son, produced a documentary that just came out. It's in a bright red box. I think you can get it at Target, but also on Amazon or online, eBay, that type of thing. It's called Hey Mo, Hey Dad. A lot of great heart and soul. There's family photos and movies, and I contributed a few things to it as well, so I was very happy about doing that for Paul. And just some really wonderful things in there, and it can provide a perspective on the Stooges from Moe's son that he really hasn't provided before. Maybe in person or at some Stooge conventions, but here he puts it all down on video and stories from his past, and some of the home movies are just remarkable.
Cut! You ain't shooting the picture right.
Why, what's the matter with it?
There's no action. It was no good from the first kiss.
Kiss? What do you know about kisses?
Tell them what we know about kisses. That's enough.
I think Comedy 3 had a hand in that as well. For years, I think Comedy 3, they have had the right idea, give the Stooges fans what they want. But I think they're getting better at it over time, and so and maybe putting a little more appreciation toward the fans themselves, and they're getting less legal and more aficionado about it. So I think they're doing better things with the Stooges. So, I give, but then you also have a lot of fans out there, people who will put their heart and soul into the preservation of the Stooges, like Gary Lassen, like Jim Pauly, Brent Seguin, and a handful of other people that know the Stooges shorts backwards and forwards and have put just a great amount of time from their own lives into websites. The threestooges.net is a great a resource on every film, every character actor. Another guy that has put a lot of time and interest in it is Frank Reiter. I'm not sure if it's Reiter or Richter, but I think it's Reiter. I've only met him once, but he's a really nice guy, and he digs into finding the Stooges co-actors and where they are and where they ended up and where the bodies are buried, But he does a great job with that. And there's a lot of fans that are into the same thing, and you're doing the same thing by putting memories down on podcasts, and hopefully years later, your collection will be, something of something you'll be proud of as far as a mass of research, So, and that's the best, make sure all the interviews you do on the Stooges, make sure you retain all that and keep that on hand, because I think after you and I are both gone, the Stooges are still going to be plugging along. I don't see it slowing down.
All right, now show these puppets how to put action behind their words.
People were very excited when I said that Steve Cox was going to be our guest. A lot of love for the work you did on One Fine Stooge, and now you've given us a little bit of a teaser about a Curly book. Tell me what's going on with this.
A lot of work. So I got a little ways to go. I have a little ways to go on this, but it's a project that is. I know it's kind of cliche just to say it's fun, but it is, and I'm kind of steadily working on that, along with a couple of other projects simultaneously. So it's been, it's gonna be a little while before it's out. I'm not even set yet on the titles and things like that. But I do have some rare interviews with a lot of people that haven't been in print yet. Things that I had in my collection of research. And quotes from Emil Sitka, quotes from Edward Burns and Jules White and Curly's second wife, Elaine. And she was a sweetie, by the way. Elaine, I liked her a lot. She was Curly's second wife, and very early on in the shorts. So it really in his prime. She was only married to him for a few years, but she had a daughter, Marilyn, and who I did a nice extensive interview with as well. But I've been friends with Marilyn and the family for years, and have just recently met her kids, a couple of her kids, which are Curly's grandsons. So that's been fun putting those interviews together. And of course, Joan and Paul have helped me. Joan and Paul, which are Moe's kids. And there's a few other character actors and people that worked with Curly along the way. So I have some really nice stuff that has yet to be in print, and it will be. But I've discovered some wonderful color photography on Curly, and that's been one of the really nice things because there's so little color photography on Curly. Really, all the Stooges. But on Curly in particular, I think that people will be astounded by some of it, and there's screen grabs from some of their films, and there's things like that. But a lot of behind-the-scenes photos and some snapshots, and of him as he got older, some things that haven't been printed before as well, and that's nice. As he got older, it wasn't necessarily a pleasant sight. I mean, he was walking with a cane and not doing as well. But at the same time, I think people were surprised by the photos that they have seen, maybe in Joan Howard's book on Curly, that even though he grew hair and looked older, sometimes even unrecognizable, the fact that he got married later in life and had another daughter and could enjoy his life. He lived in a small house. He didn't have much money anymore. He was essentially being taken care of by Moe and Larry. But he seemed to still enjoy life a little bit. Some of the snapshots will show that. I don't have any photos of him when he got really bad. I don't know that any photographs exist of that, because when he got bad, he got bad. I mean, sickly and in bed, and
it happened pretty fast, it seemed, too.
Yes, it was kind of a rapid decline. So, I think the last memories that Marilyn, his daughter, has are of him just laying in bed, sort of drooling, couldn't speak, his eyes kind of darting back and forth, and just was sort of helpless, couldn't communicate, and tears coming from his eyes and that type of thing. So it wasn't a good experience for her, as a child. But she was never especially close with him anyway. Once they were divorced, she didn't see him that often, only a few visits here and there, But tentatively, the title that I have for this book is called Curly Enthusiasm, which is a play on Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Oh, I bet you tell it to all the girls.
So, we'll see how it goes here. Like I said, I've got a lot of work to do on it yet. But I guarantee a lot of surprises for people, and some nice tributes from some celebrities and people that were big fans of Curly and that. So I think it'll be something that people will enjoy.
Pick out 2 fingers. 1, 2.
When you're getting closer, it's coming out, you got to come back on the show, and we got to go soup to nuts, let's say, on that one.
Hey, I will. I'd be happy to, and I'll certainly want to publicize it everywhere I can. And I just hope it all comes together as well as Larry's book, and because I would prefer a publisher that's going to provide the color throughout and nice quality paper. These are the concerns that I have, more than just getting it out there with any publisher. And publishing is so difficult today, and trying to get books sold. But I have confidence in this one, and we'll see how it goes. But like I said, I've still got a lot of work to do yet on it. Yeah, a lot of new things to be discovered. But sometimes it's a matter of timing, and things just sort of fall into your lap when it's right.
At your service night and day. If we don't get them, you don't pay. Excelsior!
Your favorite Stooge short?
Right off the top of my head. Yes, We Have No Bonanza is right up there. It's a really great Curly short with some great timing, and one of my favorite gags where Curly picks up a rock and from one side of the soundstage just darts this thing over and hits Mo
right in the head.
Center, right in the head. And I mean, I'm talking, like the best pitcher you could find.
You're talking about the location of that fastball, and he kept that fastball down so that he hit the mark. That was a strike.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, just there's some great sight gags in it. That's one of my favorites. One of the funniest scenes, I think, that Stooges ever put on film was a scene where Mo, Larry, and Curly go into this sort of small closet area, and they're getting ready for the morning, and they're shaving. And so they're shaving and slapping each other around, and shaving cream is flying around, and Mo starts to shave Curly. And it's hilarious. It's, with the sound effects and how he is shaving him, manually right there, in his face and the whiskers, and, like picking a hair off and clink, clink, and I mean, it's just the timing is great. That's one of the funniest scenes that I think the Stooges ever put on film.
Hey, what kind of a drink is that?
That's my own brand, a Western Surprise.
There's no liquor in that.
That's a surprise.
I have to confess, I am not one who knows the Stooges shorts backwards, forwards, and I knew a guy once who you could start the short, and he could have his back to the short and hear the first few lines of dialogue and tell you the name of the short, without even looking at it. He literally could do this. He knew them so well, backwards and forwards, and which is, my memory's not that good. It's good, but they're not that good. So, but I will say that's, to me, the quintessential Stooges scene. A girl might not enjoy it so much because they don't appreciate the whole shaving thing,
right?
But a guy would love it. If you were to introduce the Stooges with a scene, I would take that scene and do it. Yeah.
And what is the weirdest Stooge short in your opinion?
Oh, I would say without a doubt, "Cuckoo on a Choo Choo" with Shemp and the bird, and Larry and Shemp are smashed. They've been drinking, and that whole bit. That's just the most surreal and bizarre short.
Hey, that rumpot thinks he's dancing with somebody.
Yeah, give me that jug. Maybe I'll think so too.
Save a waltz for me.
And one of Larry's favorites because he fancied himself like Marlon Brando in a T-shirt.
Yeah, he had a little tougher, a bigger role in that one, kind of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a bizarre one. Bizarre.
That is weird. That one's weird.
Yeah. I mean, maybe a runner-up, there's some Bessers in there with the talking horse and the flying saucer Daffy and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's, stuff like that is pretty weird.
Some of the later Shemp ones after Shemp had passed, and they had to put fake Shemp in. Some of those get a little strange sometimes, where you go, okay, it's Malice in the Palace, and then
right, yeah, absolutely. And with Curly, also, what is it? One of the earlier ones, Uncivil Warriors? The earlier one with Bud Jameson and the scene where they're having a drink and, these are, Duck, Dodge, and Hyde, the three soldiers, But the scene with Bud Jameson where they're having brandy and the, and then Curly goes off to dress as Moe's wife, and that type of thing, and they bring in a black baby, and that.
Yeah.
I mean, just some hilarious stuff that
and pretty edgy stuff. I mean, when you think about it, that's a pretty edgy sight gag.
Where did you find it?
He was walking down by the railroad.
Alone?
No, I was with her.
Well, let's see the little darling.
He looks just like the captain.
Yeah? Looks like you, does he?
We had him down the beach all summer. He got quite sunburned.
Sunburned?
Yeah.
And I also think that Moe's contribution to parodying Hitler, the first film, really, predating only by months, but predating Chaplin's parody and
The Great Dictator,
just has its place in history, and the fact that the Stooges were nominated for an Academy Award for Men in Black, which, by the way, has a midget in it, which I love midgets.
Yeah, always good.
The little guy that worked, and when I say midget, he was a midget. He was part of Singer's Midgets for a while. And I do say that. I know it's politically incorrect. They want you to call them little people and this and that, but I've been around a lot of midgets. And I wrote a book on the little people that work in spas, and so I would have loved to have met this little guy. His name was Billy Rhodes, and he did two shorts with the Stooges. One in, I think it's I'll Never Howl Again, I think, where he played like a little bellhop. And then the other one, Men in Black, where he's dressed as a little lady in bed there, when the Stooges come in. That's a man. That's a guy. And so I try to intermingle in my books different things. So in my Munchkin book, there's a picture of the Stooges with little Billy from one of the shorts, and then trying to think. I've got that in Larry's book as well. So I try to intermingle my interest a little bit. But little people always have fascinated me, and it's nice to see that a few of them worked with the Stooges, And a couple of them used to play golf with Larry, too, Jerry Marin and a little guy by the name of Billy Curtis knew Larry well when they were Billy Curtis worked with, he was a little guy, his most famous role, outside of Terror of Tiny Town, he starred in that, but he was in High Plains Drifter, co-starred with.
Oh yeah, sure.
Clint Eastwood, yeah, and he was friends with Larry and the Stooges and that, going way, way back, yeah. So a lot of those guys in Hollywood, they were all part of the Maskers Club too, which was a comedy club out in here in L.A. And a lot of it was similar to the Friars.
Right.
The Stooges were never Friars.
Do you know what that paper was? Hot?
I love cigars, and I'm smoking one right now, as a matter of fact, and have been throughout the interview because it always relaxes me. But Curly loves cigars, and I write some about that in the book too, because there's so many photographs of the Stooges. If you look on eBay, if you look anywhere, photographs of the Three Stooges there are thousands upon thousands that they took during the production of the shorts, and they're all out there. This stuff has survived, and if you sort of study a lot of those production shots and that, they were taken usually during the short or at the end of the short. And I remember I asked Emil Sitka about that. I said, when did they take all these photos? And he said the photographer would come in with this box camera, one of these old-style box cameras, and it would say, okay, hold it for a photo, like at the end of a scene. And the Stooges would sort of scramble, and they knew exactly what to do. Pick up this, pose like this. Mo would grab this. Okay, we'll do one like this. And they would do these rapid-fire shots for the photographer, that would be really part of the short or not. Just sometimes they would just pick up something random prop off the shelf or on the floor or whatever and just start doing things for the photographer, sticking out their tongues. Mo would grab this. Okay, I'll do this. And they would just sort of do these things. And so there's so many photos. But you notice that Curly would be smoking cigars in multitudes of them because he would light up. The Stooges all smoked. Larry smoked cigarettes, Curly mostly cigars, and Mo would smoke cigarettes for a while. Then he got into pipes, but he smoked cigarettes too, which was what gave him lung cancer, I'm sure.
Right.
And that's what he died of. But a lot of there are tons of photos of them. If you look in Curly's hand, there's a cigar. Sometimes he tries to hide it. Sometimes it's very evident, but it's at the end of the short or during a break when they're taking these because they've lit up, to just relax, whatever. And the photographer came in and said, "Let's do these,"
Right.
So, you see him smoking an awful lot in these photos, and I think it's kind of fascinating. There's one photo in particular that was of extremely good resolution. And I zoomed in on it, and it's just Curly's hand holding a lit cigar, and it makes a really, really cool image. So I was able to zoom in on this and clean it up nice, and I'd like to just run that full page because I want to do some creative stuff with the photography in there where zoom in. There's some great photography on the Stooges, original negatives, so you're able to go in. And I've been fortunate in locating some of these original nitrate negatives. They're 8x10 size negatives.
Wow.
And you have these scanned in high res, and then you go in and zoom in on these things, super high res, so you get half their face, and you know who it is, but you see every line, every detail, every wrinkle, every stubble on their face, and so I want to be able to do a lot of that in the Curly book. Where I did a little bit of that in Larry's book with some creative stuff, but I want to go in and just zoom in on some things. And one of my favorite shots, like I said, is this photo of just Curly's hand, his wrist in his hand, and he's holding a cigar. So you see his hand with that lit cigar, and it's kind of an interesting study of one of his what would you call it?
A way he relaxes, just an unwind.
His vice, outside of alcohol, which he loved,
and girls,
and women, yes, absolutely, yeah,
and dogs,
yeah, yes, and dogs. So I try to explore all of those, in the book. And his nephew told me, and I'm quoting. I have to go back to get the exact quote, but it's something like, women, alcohol, dogs. Though that's what Curly was all about.
Wow.
I mean, essentially, that summed up that man right there.
Yeah.
That's what he was after. That's what his interest was, you know.
Woo, 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 woo. This is serious.
Favorite Stooge?
Boy, that's a tough one. You know, I mean, I would have to say the one who makes me laugh the most, if that's your favorite, that'd be Curly.
Yeah.
You know, but it's real close with Shemp. It's really close. Yeah. Yeah.
I think for me, it's like I said earlier, it's kind of changed. Now I'm back at a Larry phase where I'm fascinated with Larry, but I just recently watched, and I can't remember the name of the short offhand, but Vernon Dent plays an insurance man, and he comes into the room. The Stooges are being duped by a good-looking woman upstairs. She's running an insurance scam, and Vernon Dent's coming to check up on her. And Shemp goes into basically a Joe Palooka mode, and his footwork, and he's throwing punches and this and that at Vernon Dent. And I watched it probably half a dozen times, just that scene in a row, and I thought, my God, he was a ballerina. He was just beautiful on his feet.
That scene is so, the timing on it and him doing that, and then when he delivers the punch, he gives one of those, you know, like sound
the
effect,
thumb
you
to
know?
the nose, yeah,
like his own sound effect. He gives his own sound effect on it, which, you know, but I love that scene. His footwork in that is incredible, absolutely incredible. Oh yeah, I know.
And playing off of Vernon Dent. Vernon Dent plays it just perfectly.
Yeah, absolutely.
What a great foil he was.
One of Shemp's, I could say one of my favorite scenes of Shemp's is when he's, I forget the name of the short again. They used it like twice in a remake as well, but they go into a room with Christine McIntyre, and she kicks out the other guys, so it's just Shemp and Christine McIntyre, and the jewel that they're looking for, the diamond, is in a little mint tray, little mint bowl on the table, and he's going to take a mint, so he takes the diamond instead and swallows it. And I mean, the scene is just so well done, so beautiful, and the expression on his face when he gulps that thing down and he starts beating his chest, you know, is just incredible, you know, just incredible. You know, I remember, you know, it's so sometimes difficult to describe the Stooges, but you know, Bob Saget had said that lightning struck for these guys, and that is so true.
Yeah.
Because, and it's amazing that these guys were brothers and that they had so much talent like this, and to be able to be aware of that and put it on film is a whole nother thing, you know, and to know what you look like on film and to in other words, Curly and Shemp, really all the guys, had to have studied themselves enough, maybe going into the theater and watching it themselves, or the rushes, I don't know. But they knew what to do to put it on film. It wasn't by chance. They knew just the right angle to get it right on the camera, along with the director, of course. I mean, it didn't just happen. But to be able to know what expression exactly to use right there with that gag or that line. Yeah. And they were very, you know, I think that they were very careful about, they were picky. And any good actor is. They're selective about what movement they're going to use to put that on film right there. And you know, Curly was especially good at that. He knew, you know, what face, what crossed eye to use, what wince, what look or glance or even sound effect to use in this particular, or even how quick to make it, you know, and to. It's remarkable how selective they were. And I'll tell you, one of the things that Larry said in one of his interviews that made such a big difference in how I looked at that, he said that in the beginning, when they first started the films, he said that one of the most important things for him to get to learn, to get to know on camera, was to make sure that he did not appear to be expecting the slap.
Right.
And that's a very difficult thing to do. So they've rehearsed the scene, and Mo says, okay, I'm going to slap you right here, and they do it a couple of times. Well, when you're getting slapped that hard, sometimes you tell yourself to look the other way, to close your eyes.
You're gun shy. Yeah.
Yeah. If you know something's coming at you, you jerk away.
Right.
But to be able to control that so perfectly as to just take the slap each time they did a take, you know what I mean? To accept that slap new each time for those takes, and perfectly, so it looks like Mo just slaps you, without
out of nowhere.
That takes an incredible amount of discipline on camera to do that. Believe it or not, it's not easy to do.
No.
And that struck me. I thought, wow, that's very intuitive of him to explain that.
I mean, you can't imagine, because Larry took the one that always stands out to me is Disorder in the Court, after he kills the gum on Mo's nose and goes into his Tarzan routine, and Mo cracks him as hard as he can. Larry was smiling all the way up until the point when Mo's hand cracks him across the cheek. And I just thought, he cracked him really hard. And you think about that, Larry didn't look like he had any idea what was coming.
Yeah, right. And believe it or not, I mean, like Mo said one time, it doesn't just happen. You know what I mean? They rehearsed this stuff. They did these.
Oh, yeah.
There would be little things that they would do, or maybe Curly would extend a gag, or, they would just let it run, because, you let it run and you get some gems on screen from Curly. And Jules White said that. Sometimes they would just let it trail off, and Ed Burns, the director, he knew as well. Just sometimes let it run. And, again, I just wish that there were outtakes out there.
Oh, my gosh.
That would be an amazing thing if someone said, we've discovered a reel of old outtakes on the Stooges. There's a half an hour's worth of it here. It would be gold.
Oh, we'll love her down to meet her when she comes. Oh, I'll go right out to meet her. With a posy I will greet her, and she'll think that I'm the sweetest. What's the matter, don't you?
No.
What is your most treasured item?
That's easy, and I'm looking at it right now. It's in my office. I have a set of 3 canceled checks that are signed, Mo and Larry and Shemp. And,
wow.
Nicely framed with its original photo of Mo, Larry, and Shemp from an episode, the short where they're pharmacists. It's a great shot. And I had the checks I got years ago, back in the 80s. Joan Mauer opened up her collection and decided to sell off boxes and boxes that she had of Mo's old canceled checks. And you could send, and all the proceeds went to a cancer society here in Los Angeles, a charity. And you could send in $10. And she would mail you, and made out to the charity, and she would mail you a check. And of course, I should have gotten more than one. I bought one, and I had it for years and years. Then I got a check from Shemp's wife, and somebody else later down the line was selling a Larry check, which I bought. So I had all 3. And there's only one way to guarantee their signatures. It's on a canceled check. And
right.
So, and they're really nice. They're beautiful. The ink is held up well and everything. And then later, and I had that framed up for years, and later on I found a Mo check, same size. He did a lot of business-size checks. And it was one that was made out to somebody, but it was written on my birthday. And
oh,
so
my gosh.
I got to have it. So I bought that and then sold the other one. And so I reframed it, and I have that up in my office. But that's a treasure for me. If I had to say one particular treasure, that would be it. And then, I have other things, some signed photos from Stooges and Emil Sitka and things like that. But I also, one of the other things is I have a nice framed photo of Mo and Shemp and Curly, the 3 brothers, kind of a rare shot, and it's on the set of I think it's Hot Scots, one of the early Curlys, where they're making the homemade scotch, I guess is what it is.
The Breath of Heather.
Yes, yeah, and you know, they're in kilts and that kind of thing, and it's a shot that Larry took of the three brothers.
Wow.
And it's a very rare shot of the three brothers, and it's in. I put it in One Fine Stooge. It's in there as well, and but I have a nice 8x10 of that framed on my wall that looks really nice, and so that's kind of a treasure for me too. And that's, yeah, I would say that's about it really. But maybe I should say the best thing of all has just been the experiences.
What happened?
Nothing yet.
The experiences over the years, kind of delving into the history of the Stooges and getting to know a couple of them and some of the relatives and that's been such a treat for me, and something that, you know, you can't trade for anything. So I was lucky, very lucky.
And Steve Cox, I want to thank you so much. We have done a marathon show. I had a feeling once you and I got on the phone that we would go over 2 hours, and we have.
Oh, has it been? It doesn't seem like it.
No, it seems like 15 minutes that we've been talking, but we've been going 2 hours, and you have given us remarkable stories, and you've given us a remarkable book, and I know the Curly book will be a treasure for all Stooge fans. Where can people get in touch with you? Where can people find out about, you have a laundry list of other fantastic books in addition to One Fine Stooge. Where can people get in touch with you? Where can people pick up your books?
Well, believe it or not, I don't have a website or anything. I'm on Facebook. Find me on there. Or if somebody wants to reach me, they can contact you, and you can give my email if you want. I live in Los Angeles, and I'm just working and keeping up with life and enjoying life, and as far as the books, you know, they're on Amazon, I'm right now I'm working on a book on the Flintstones, the TV show, and that'll be out sometime next year. But I'm just finishing that now, and also I will give you this, some of my favorite titles. So if you're interested in any other Steve Cox titles, my book on the Munchkins from The Wizard of Oz, one of my favorites. I wrote a book on It's a Wonderful Life called It's a Wonderful Life, a memory book. That's still out there. I co-wrote a book on Don Knotts with a friend of mine, Kevin Marhanka. That's called The Incredible Mr. Don Knotts. It's all about his movie work. And that's out there, still selling. And I'm possibly revising my book on I Dream of Jeannie, called Dreaming of Jeannie. That's still out there. You can find copies. My book on the Munsters is out there. That book made me a bestseller, and thanks to Howard Stern. One of my all-time favorites. I mean, I love the Addams Family, too, but as far as old, you know, just good old belly laughs, the Munsters is it. And Howard Stern mentioned a few times the Munsters book, and the sales just shot through the roof and put me on a bestsellers list on Amazon. So like I said, that made me a best-selling author, so I'm very proud of that. But that book is still out there. And by the way, I sent him a copy of One Fine Stooge, and he loved it. He replied and thanked me, and he loves the Stooges as well. And I think he mentioned that one on the air too. I don't listen to Howard Stern on Sirius. I don't subscribe to Sirius, but people tell me, "Oh my God, he mentioned you on the air," and I'm very happy about that. So
Billy West used to go on all the time and do that phenomenal Larry Fine impression.
Absolutely, yeah. I have never met Billy West. I'd love to sometime, and I hope I do. And it's funny because I think, now this is a strange story, but Billy lived on a street here in Los Angeles across the street from one of the Munchkins from The Wizard of Oz. So sometimes I would see this guy getting in a car across the street when I would be visiting. The Munchkin was named Jerry Marin. He's still alive, the only one of the little people that's still alive. And a couple times I thought, God, that looks like Billy West. And a couple other times I passed him going up this hill, which toward the house. And I thought, God, that looks like him. And then someone told me that he was talking about little Jerry. And I thought, oh, that must be him. He lived on the same street, and I never realized it. I should have gone knocking. And I don't know whether he has a copy of One Fine Stooge. I'm kind of thinking he might. But if I meet him one day, I'm going to bring a copy and give it to him. And but his impersonation of Larry is unbelievable. I love it. You know,
the bit where he does Larry Goes to Woodstock.
Oh, that's great. That's classic.
Hey, Mo, I'm getting dizzy. What's hashish?
There's another one where he recorded it, and it got passed around amongst a lot of fans. And I think it was a private thing. And a buddy of mine was in animation, he got it from somebody else, and, you know, one of those underground things. And it's a bit that Billy West did all three voices, Mo, Larry, and Curly Joe. And it's a routine where they're in the studio recording like one of their children's albums, but there's a lot of slapping and cussing and everything. And it's hilarious. Oh, it's inspired. It's great. And I've got a copy of that on audio tape. And but I'd like to meet Billy sometime, and I will sometime, I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah, Billy seems, and he had a pretty big role in Paul's Hey Mo, Hey Dad.
Yes.
And his respect for the Stooges and his affinity for the Stooges is palpable. It's easy to see.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And you can see where he has, like you and me, have just, you know, followed the shorts and watched them, and have just, you know, it's become ingrained in his head. But much more so with him as far as the voice goes. And he even did the voice for Larry's sister years ago, and she just nearly flipped. She said, oh, my God, you sound just like Larry.
Hey, Jimmy, is it my imagination, or has Santana's drummer been taking a solo for a day and a half?
Trying to do the voices is really difficult. The one person that's come really, really close to doing a really great Curly is a voiceover actor by the name of Frank Welker, who did the voice of Jabberjaw for Hanna-Barbera years ago.
Sure.
It's a great replication of Curly with all the sound effects and the bells and whistles and everything. And I've interviewed him a few times. I've met him. He's really great. And, of course, just a number one Stooges nut, you know. He grew up on it, loved Curly. And when they proposed this series, this is back in the 70s, you know, based on Curly. Jabberjaw is based on Curly.
Absolutely.
You know, the expressions, the sound effects and everything, they asked Frank to do it. And Frank also is the voice of Fred on Scooby-Doo and many other characters, many other characters. In fact, he does Scooby-Doo now. But he's been Fred and just many other characters through the years, and still works today. But one of his favorites was Curly as Jabberjaw. And if you ever watch Jabberjaw, it's really good. It's you know, the more Curly they pump into it, the better. And,
right.
Hey, where's the tablet, gang?
It's not so much slapstick, but you have this giant fat shark doing Curly, you know, and I mean, I loved it. I watched it when it first came out, and I thought, oh my God, this is great. There's something with the Stooges. The voices are half the comedy.
Oh
they really
my gosh.
Are.
Well, that's like we said earlier, when you would just record the audio, because you knew what they looked like, and the voices were so strong, and the reactions to things were so strong, that the audio sometimes was enough.
Yeah, it could just carry you through it, and that's also one of my pet projects that I'd love to get going one day. And I've pitched it a few times, and Sony has not picked it up. Comedy 3 hasn't picked it up, but I would love to do it. And that is a CD compilation of all the song parodies and all the song bits that they did through the shorts, into the and a selection of the vocal inflections, you know. And then go into their later career as well with some of the children's stuff that they did on albums, you know, for the kiddies. And then round it out with some audio interviews with the Stooges and Emil Sitka and a few of the directors in that, and make it a really nice deluxe CD, because these guys sang really well too.
Oh, and, beautifully.
You know, there's some great bits where they do very brief segments of harmonized. I mean, with Curly, with Shemp, and maybe a little bit with Besser, but even just very quick elements like the hello, 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 and stuff like that. But you have songs with Shemp and with Curly, and of course the alphabet song is fantastic.
Right.
That's one of my favorite bits too, of them singing. One of the few times you really hear Curly singing solo is in the alphabet song, the B-A-B, B-E-B, B-I, Bicky Bye, and that whole song. And, so those guys were really good singers, too. And if you ever listen to any of their children's albums, they got some cute songs on there. Some of the Christmas albums. Larry singing Mersey Dotes is great.
Yeah.
Great, just hearing that voice and hearing him sing solo, and I would love to do that and produce that with Sony, but they haven't picked it up. I don't know, they'd be too expensive with the song rights and stuff like that. But for the most part, it'd be all in one package as far as the Stooges rights go. Song rights shouldn't be too terribly money for that because most of the songs are ancient and can't be too expensive to lease. So
or even public domain at this point.
Right, exactly. And so it shouldn't be too difficult, but I would like to do that once and for all. No one has ever done that project, and it needs to be done and needs to be done right with all the best selections and edit them just perfectly, maybe a few bits of dialogue in between, things like that. People would love it. It's a perfect thing for if you want to call it a comedy album, but it would be a compilation of the best of the Stooges on CD. And there's enough out there to please people. And also, there's a lot of radio DJs that would love to have those sound effects straight off the films, nice and clean, at hand. You know what I mean? So they can drop them in anywhere they want. And by the way, I have to correct something. People always say, certainly. It's not certainly. It's certainly. There's no L-Y in it.
Oh, certainly.
So that's one of my pet peeves, people saying certainly. Goes right through me.
We're not ordinary people. We're morons.
Steve Cox, it was an honor, a privilege, and just a treat to talk and have you on the show. And, of course, everybody listening, please, One Fine Stooge, Steve Cox and Jim Terry on that one. Please go find a copy of it. Amazon, go wherever. Go to your local library. Somebody's got it. You have to read it. And look for it. And, of course, we're going to be waiting with bated breath on this Curly book because, you're, like I said, your track record with the One Fine Stooge book, it was definitive for Stooge fans and for Larry fans. And we have no doubt that the Curly book will be the exact same thing.
I hope so. I hope it'll live up to some expectations, but I think it will. I go into books searching for the answers to things I don't know, and I consider myself sort of the average fan as well. So when I can find these things, these gems, and put them in the book, I'm all the happier and proud to put them between two covers. So when that happens, I will be back, I promise.
And we will absolutely look forward to that, having you on again. Steve Cox, author of One Fine Stooge, which you can find on Amazon right now. And I suggest if you haven't, please do it. You're obviously a Stooges fan. If you're going to sit here for an hour and a half and listen to two guys talk shop, if you will, about the boys, you'll definitely be interested in One Fine Stooge from Jim Terry and Steve Cox, who was our two-part guest on the show. Gotta thank Steve for the great stories and for taking the time. It really means a lot to have Steve on. I'm a big fan of Steve's. His Monster book is great, and One Fine Stooge is unparalleled in the world of Stooge books. So please, go find yourself a copy and check it out. And I am going to hold you to that, Steve, to have you back on when that Curly book is ready to go. So we all have something to look forward to. And while we're at it, let's just go back and give some plugs for our former guests we had on, Saxon Emil Sitka and the Emil Sitka Fan Club. You can find Saxon on Facebook and, of course, the Emil Sitka Fan Club. Also on Facebook, Jeff Dale, The Fine Art of Boxing, which is available. You can find him on Facebook as well, or you can go to Amazon. I believe they have a Kindle version. Part fact, part fiction, but a lot of fun, a great read. It's kind of the story of if Larry Fine wouldn't have gone into vaudeville and the stage and screen and instead pursued his boxing dreams. So really great stuff. Jeff paints a beautiful picture of the time period, and really, really fun stuff. Really good book. And Bill Casera, the author of Nobody's Stooge, Ted Healy, and of course Stooge Heavy, the book on Vernon Dent. And you can find all of that at Bear, B-E-A-R, Bear Manor, M-A-N-O-R, media.com, bearmanormedia.com. And of course Amazon for that as well. Amazon's kind of your one-stop shop for everything Stooges and everything Stoogecast guest related. They're not endorsing the show, and they're not paying me anything, but yeah, I guess go there anyway and get all that stuff. And you can find Bill on Facebook as well. And Bradley David Server, Curly's grandson, a really great show that we had with him. If you haven't had a chance, go on the ASTRO Radio Z network and find that episode and listen to it. And Bradley David Server, of course, the Grand Stooges. You can find that on Facebook. You can find Curly's grandson on Facebook. And, of course, the Grand Stooges online as well. And I can put a plug in for one of our next guests will be Jim Pauley, the author of Three Stooges Hollywood filming locations. And if you haven't had a chance to page through that one, definitely do it. A beautiful coffee table book and so thorough. And I was reading the book and just poring over the pictures. And I just told my wife, I said, what a labor of love this book is from Jim Pauley. But Jim Pauley is a Three Stooges champion, and all of us as fans owe a lot of debt and a lot of thanks to Jim Pauley. And once we have him on the show, we'll go into what he has coming up, because I know that there's big things brewing, and Jim has his fingers all over that one. So we'll have Jim Pauley on the show coming up, and I'm also working on a few other guests. Fingers crossed, if they work out, we'll have some fantastic shows on the way. So hopefully next time we talk, I will have more information. But until then, I update everybody all the time on Facebook. Just find the Stoogecast on Facebook. Give us a like, and we're always posting fun stuff on there and keeping you updated on future shows and future guests and what our guests are doing. So find us there, Facebook. And a big thanks again to Steve Cox, author of One Fine Stooge, for 2 great episodes of the Stoogecast. And until next time, guys, take care.
What's the matter with you? I'm trying to think, but nothing happens.